So what's the biggest problem we're going to have with agentic? That's what we're going to talk about today on AI Insights with John Roese, and it's going to set the tone for probably a lot of conversations this year. One of the things that we now know, and as you know, we've been building autonomous agents for now over a year and a half. We understand the technology pretty well. I've talked a lot about it. But one of the things that we discovered towards the second half of last year as we started to get into production with autonomous agents was that these are different. They are a different technology. There is a different ecosystem. They have different capabilities. They use our IT systems in different ways. And, because of how powerful they are and because of potentially how risky they could be, it is important that we have to have rules about how we use them. And so my view and our learning has been that the actual most important piece of agentic is not the agent. It's the framework and rules you set around the agents that define how they should behave, how they should interact with your company, how you should be able to control them. This idea of governance and controls around agentic is not something that can be optional. Unbounded, ungoverned, uncontrolled agentic could be incredibly dangerous, risky, and financially costly. On the other hand, properly directed agents that are operating against a well-defined set of objectives with a set of rules around them and the technical scaffolding to make sure that they stay within the bounds of behavior that you're comfortable with will be one of the most powerful tools that we have going forward. So with that, last year, around October timeframe, I sat down internally with my technical teams and governance teams and legal, and we basically set a set of rules. I've hinted at these before. We're just about, maybe by the time you're listening to this, we'll have published some of the early learnings around this and the frameworks. But inside of Dell today, we have a set of agentic guidelines, and they are not high-level hand-wavy stuff. They are very specific technical requirements and rules about how agentic systems are supposed to behave within the company. So the reason I bring this up is I think this idea and this understanding of setting the rules around agentic, knowing how agents work, but more importantly, how they should work vis-a-vis your security architecture, your observability architecture, your regulatory frameworks, your data environment is as important as standing up the first agent. And so we're going to spend a great deal of time over maybe the next several months talking about how we're seeing agentic get implemented, and more importantly, what level of rules and governance and architecture we're putting in place to make sure that they do it in a way that is compatible with our expectations of security and trust and privacy and data access and ultimately ROI outcomes. And so that has manifest inside of Dell as a document. That document is 20-something pages long. It's a specification, and it is non-negotiable. If you want to be an agentic framework inside of Dell, these are the rules, and there's no other path. And now those rules will evolve, but the bottom line is the fact that we've now documented it gives us the right way to evaluate agentic ideas, agentic frameworks, agentic tooling. We are now in the process of turning that into essentially an RFI, where we are sharing that with our suppliers, because as you know, not all of our agentic systems will run in our environment and be totally tied to Dell. So even in that federated model where third-party agentic systems are part of our agentic framework, these rules still apply. Now, I'll give you, some high-level, examples of what's in this, but we're going to go in a lot more detail and walk through all of it over the next several months. But for instance, we have made a decision that agents are entities that do work. And if an agent is going to do work on behalf of Dell, it needs to carry a Dell identity. That identity needs to come from our identity management system. So even an agent running in a third-party platform, if it has access to Dell data and does work for Dell, must carry an identity issued by our identity management systems. The reason for that is, one, that authorizes it to actually be part of my systems. But more importantly, it forces me to understand that it's an asset. I issue an identity because it's registered somewhere. I know it exists. There are no unknown agents in the Dell world going forward. Secondly, if the agent does something wrong, I have the ability by revoking the identity to completely eliminate it. And so even if that agent's running in a third party, if I have a security risk, if I have an operational risk, if it starts to just behave unusually, the fact that I control identity means I can revoke its identity, reset the connections, and the bottom line is it cannot establish a TLS session, it cannot access a data service, it cannot do A to A, it cannot do MCP, it can do nothing. And so it's a very powerful tool if you control identity, we have made the decision that when it comes to agents, we will control identity of all agents working on behalf of this company. I think that is a very rational decision. After we've done it, it seems very obvious. Before we did it, it was not clear. But that's an example of the things that we are now specifying. We are specifying protocols and mechanisms for observability and how we'll emit telemetry. We are specifying rules about how agents will be defined and implemented. In fact, we decided that we did not want people building their own agents arbitrarily. We wanted to go through our governance process because we think agents do work and work should relate to ROI. We have a process to make sure that that happens. We've made decisions around the topology. We know early on we thought we could build a single agentic system to power Dell. And what we realized very quickly is agents go where the work is. And we have a very complex ecosystem, lots of different places where work happens. So we decided, no, it's going to be a federated architecture. In the center, there would be agentic platforms that we fully control and we use for our own internal uses and to act as the control point for other agentic systems. But outside of that core ring, a second ring would form for fit for purpose agents, agents that were completely optimized to help our services organization, our sales organization, our supply chain organization do their thing. But these could not operate as islands that were not connected to each other. Protocols like A to A allow us to have them talk to each other. We need rules around this. And so we've set those rules. We've defined the topology. Bottom line is, as you go on the agentic journey, and we're going to have this discussion, it's probably going to occupy most of our conversations for the next several months. It's really about understanding not just what an agent is and what it can do, but how do you incorporate it into your enterprise IT systems, into your business processes, into your security architecture, into your data architecture. And if you get that right, if it's done in a thoughtful, integrated way, then the agent behaves as an orderly participant in your company doing work as opposed to a random tool doing things that you can't control and don't understand. For me, I like the first option, and that's what we're going after. We think we've built an architecture that allows us to do that. We think it's really about governance again and about applying a set of rules to the agentic environment. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. One of the things that we haven't, we don't always do, but we're going to try to do as part of that is this can be a long journey. There's a lot of dimensions of agentic that are worth talking about. So, we're interested in your feedback. We'll try some polling vehicles and other tools to try to see which of these many, many dimensions of agentic is most interesting for you. If you have opinions, if you have ideas, if we put out a poll, please vote on it. And we'll try to steer the conversation to the things that are most pressing. But bottom line, agents are going to be one of the most powerful tools that we have. But we have to use them in a responsible, structured, intelligent, secure way. And if we don't set rules around them that define how we want them to work, we will have chaos where the industry and various tools just work independently and we're always playing catch up, which is not a good place to be when we're talking about a foundational component of almost every enterprise over the next several years. So looking forward to that conversation. Please give us your feedback about what's most important. And, again, the takeaway is agents without governance is an incredibly dangerous thing. Agents that are well governed and well organized become one of the most powerful tools that you could use to accelerate your path to significant ROI and AI impact. So looking forward to that conversation, and give us your feedback, and we'll see where the conversation goes over this year.